Yes, they join. All right, welcome everybody to the May 26th meeting of the School Safety Subcommittee of the Racial Equity and Policing Commission. Lauren, if you wouldn't mind bringing up our agenda, I'll just run through it really quickly.
Yeah, 1 second.
You.
All right. Can you guys see it?
Excellent. Yes. Okay, so we have, as you can see, we have Councilmember Mono here, and then we're maybe potentially going to have School Board Member Mohammed Bayed join us as well. So we'll wait and see if we get him as well. And then Commissioner Salazar Hall had wanted to talk about some additional changes to the MOU and some other, as it relates to some other legislation, and I'll let her speak for herself on that. And then I went through, as promised last time, I went through and kind of showed our recommendations that have gone through the full commission and kind of other things that have been discussed but haven't been brought forward as official recommendations yet. And so I have kind of a quick breakdown of that we can look at to see what we want to move forward at this point for official recommendations, and maybe what you share with us, Nicole, we can add to that as well. We have all of our recommendations documents, but for some reason it was way easier if I put it in a Google sheet to see like, here's what we've done, here's what we still need to do, and it makes it kind of a quick reference version. And then we have had several youth programs who have requested time to come talk to us, and I saw there's sort of an open invitation out there that if they are able to join us, that they will. So I've left that as a placeholder in case we do get anyone joining us from those programs. And then as we know, the hour goes very quickly, and at that point we'll talk about what we want to do next time. So with that, welcome. There's somebody, he's connecting to audio, so we'll wait until he connects to audio. And then who is iPhone today? Can you identify yourself, iPhone?
Yeah, this is Detective Atkinson again. Sorry, I had some technical difficulties today.
No, that's great. Thank you, Detective Atkinson, for being here. Lauren, would you mind renaming him so that I can keep track of who is who on the call? And then who is on as Jerncito? Can you identify yourself so we can greet you properly? Jerncito? We see Beverly Hawkins, and hello, welcome Beverly. We always love having you here from League of Women Voters. I'm not sure, Jerncito, if you've, oh, Jaren, he's at work, he's just listening in. Okay, great. And then the school board member, Mohammed Bayed, hello. And we have our council member. So maybe that's a good place to start, is to have our guests just share with us what you're hoping to learn, or what we can tell you, or what you want to tell us in attending today.
Sure, I'll start. I actually wanted to connect Mohammed and myself with you because I just remember when Mohammed was running for school board, one thing he mentioned was school resource officers and some of his experiences and his kids' experiences, and that kind of struck me. And I wanted to make sure that that the commission was able to sort of get that perspective, just because I remember that being something that Mohammed had mentioned. And I had, Mohammed and I had talked a few times recently, and I said, have you connected with our Racial Equity and Policing Commission? And hadn't. So I'm more here as to make the connection between the city and the school board. Also super interested in hearing whatever you would like me as a council member to hear, but mostly here to make the connection between school board and city.
Wonderful. Do we have you both for the hour, or do we have you for a short portion of the hour? Okay, wonderful, because we are going to kind of go through our recommendations as a whole. So I think that'll be good for you both to hear, and we would love for you to hear that conversation if you're willing to stick with us. And then school board, what's the right way to say, board member? Is that the right way to address? Okay, thank you. Board Member Bayed, do you want to tell us what your interest is in school safety?
Well, let me see here. Much better. Can everyone hear me? Yeah, I had it like on a noise canceling. I was going crazy for a sec. So, hey, Darren, thank you for connecting me over here. And so we all know safety is a big thing, you know, in schools. And unfortunately, sometimes it is used politically in a way that affects actually the whole meaning of what is safety is at school and how we can provide that safety. Because personally, you know, I'm a firm believer in having safety, but the only people that can actually make sure that things are, you know, going on safely in school is the community itself. It's the students themselves who are at school. They establish that network. And so, and I'm here literally speaking, you know, new to this. I'm here to learn. And see where you can, you know, what directions you would help me and help the other board members, basically help our schools, you know, to make sure that things are done without affecting the marginalized communities or minority students in this case, you know, especially on the West Side schools. And so we're trying to like have it be as peacefully safe, but not PTSD generator.
Excellent. Well, your interests are very aligned with those of this subcommittee and of the commission as a whole. I would say if and of course commission members can always speak for themselves, but I'm going to make an attempt because we also have Jaron on who said he's interested in the overall process. He was sharing with us on the chat. So I'm going to see if I can do like a really quick rundown of how we've approached this as a subcommittee, and then we can jump into the substance of the conversation. So we recognized early on that there were subsets of areas of interest that would benefit from having subcommittees where we could really dig into the issues and really understand and then make good recommendations. And so school safety subcommittee was born that way. We started by learning. We interviewed people. We've talked to several school board members, the current superintendent. We've talked to a number of police officers, as well as we've had some SROs and officers join us in our subcommittee, Detective Atkinson being one of them, who's on the call. And so we started by learning to really try and understand the current MOU, to understand all of the things that are happening in school safety, and from there have had some recommendations come forward. And we're also learning a lot of areas where we don't know what we don't know, right? I feel like has been a pretty big theme, because data collection isn't a perfect system, and the mechanisms that are in place for accountability aren't always perfect systems either. So it's been really interesting to learn the universe in which the SRO program and other school safety issues live. And so now we are in a place of moving forward a lot more recommendations. I think we also are wary of unintended consequences of our recommendations. So at one point, we had never we've never said that we want to get rid of the SRO program, but we also never said that it was outside of the realm of the things we might recommend. But at some point, I can't remember who first pointed it out to us, that there are places where they have gotten rid of the SRO program, and then the school district has gone in and hired private security, which is a whole different set of concerns, right? And so I just offer that as an example of areas where we don't want to make such sweeping recommendations that we end up creating a separate problem rather than addressing the current ones. And so anything anybody would add to that sort of really quick and dirty rundown of what we've been up to? That's just from a process perspective, how we've approached this. Go ahead, Nicole.
I think that's exactly right. And what we've kind of run into, Darren and Mohammed, is we've realized, and I'm sorry, I used your first names. Call me by my first name. I'm a first name kind of person. But what we've run into is we realize we don't have really any data to do anything, to make any sort of determination on whether to keep the SRO program, to scrap it, do something completely different. We just don't have the data for it. We've all heard so many mixed stories about the SROs. I've heard a lot of really negative ones from kiddos, from their families. But at the same time, other members of our commission have heard really positive stories about the SROs. My experience with them when I was a DCFS caseworker was pretty negative, but that was a really long time ago. So maybe it was just a bad SRO. We don't know, but what it comes down to is we don't have good data, and we'd be making some decisions, some pretty major decisions on really a handful of stories and anecdotes that we've heard. And I don't feel comfortable making recommendations on anecdotes alone, especially when the data is there. And we've learned from Commissioner Ahmad that the Salt Lake City School District has the same data gathering I guess program that Granite School District does. So the capability apparently is there. We just need to get it started and be able to gather that data. But of course, that takes some cooperation between agencies, because of course, Mohammed, that we can't order you guys to do anything. All we can do is ask very politely for the benefit of all of our students.
And that's very easy data to get very quickly. Like it takes 3 to 5 minutes max, if that.
May I ask a question about the data?
Mm-hmm.
What specifically is the data that we'd be looking for? Like, who is interacting with the SRO and what for, and what racial background they are, and male or female, or things like that? Is that the—
Yeah, okay. Things like that. And I think we wanted to go a little bit further and see how involved an SRO was in any school discipline, because there are administrations, teachers, though they're not supposed to, do use SROs for school discipline issues. And of course, we don't want to do that. And I know the SROs don't like being put in that position because that's not their role. But to what extent they're involved in it, and whether it leads to a more positive outcome or a more negative outcome. Because what I've learned with the Salt Lake City School District is there really are no expulsions, they're just transferred. And that's tantamount to an expulsion, and what that effect, being transferred to a new district really does have a negative impact on a student. And so we want to see how many SROs are involved in that process, how many have prevented a transfer maybe, or prevented a kiddo from being suspended. That's more of a deeper dive that we want to do. And I don't know if that data exists, but I think it can be gathered. But that's what we want to kind of get into is how involved are SROs in some of that discipline process, if they have a negative impact or a positive impact. Because I could see it both ways, but again, we don't know.
Yeah, and I think that's another example of something we learned, because we also talked to the data analysts at the school district and the data analyst at the police department, and we learned a lot from them about opportunities where we could use those resources differently to gather data differently. Like, they are very talented, capable people who answer to bosses who want particular things, right? And so I think one of the things that we have not brought forward as an official recommendation, but is still in the conversation, is creating some kind of synergy between those two departments where the data could be gathered and used differently. So I hope did that answer your question, council member? That, yeah, there's just gaps in the data, so it's really hard to make conclusions. Welcome, Moises. Nice to see you. We were just catching the representatives here up on kind of what we've been up to, what the process has been to date, and some of the challenges we've run into and identified along the way. So I'm going to, and I think it might be good to just get into some of the meat of what we've been doing and why, and then we can talk about just in terms of our agenda today, then we can get into the ones that we haven't moved forward and decide which ones we want to keep moving on. So I will share my screen, and I created I know Nicole and Moises will love this. I created a Google document that we have varying preferences on editing in this group is what that reference is about. So created a Google document to, let's see if I can find it, to track kind of our, you know what, Lauren, do you have it up? Because now I can't find it. I closed too many windows. I got too aggressive before this and closed all my windows. If you don't mind sharing what I'm one of those people that works with like every window open all day long. So before these calls, I try and close them all up so that if I need to share something, it's not hidden in the depths.
Here it is.
Okay, so I tried, some of this is kind of shorthand for the bigger recommendations. They're much more verbose and detailed if you read the recommendations document. So the first thing we went through and did is the MOU was set to expire during the work of this commission. And there are varying reports on the actual expiration date, but all of that said, it was moved forward so that we wouldn't be in the position of having it expire or need to be renegotiated during the work of this commission, so that we would have an idea of what we want to replace it with or not replace it at all, etc. And that one was approved and implemented. I'll say better accountability and criteria for the SRO program, because the MOU does identify, for example, twice a year meeting of an oversight committee, but that's been tasked to people who have lots of things on their plate, and the goals stated in the MOU are pretty broad and very difficult to hold anyone accountable for. And so as part of that, we had a recommendation, like two of the Moises and Steve Angeweirden were able to go and attend that oversight committee, and they gave us the opportunity to give them some draft criteria, because we are spending so much time thinking about this issue. And so we have created that and we'll send that to them. But that need for accountability. Then the PYP program improvements to help PYP program, that's the Promising Youth Project. Initially, that started out as a recommendation to move it over to the city. So because there were some issues with it being linked to the police department, but in coordination with the PD, they asked basically for a little more time, because that program was in its infancy and they really wanted to make it work under the PD, because there's good synergy between that and the SRO program. As a result of us having made that recommendation, that program was given some more resources, was given space to occupy, was given a number of different things that they needed. But for now, the specific recommendation we made about moving it over to the city is on hold for about a year, and then it's meant to be reevaluated. Isn't that? You guys speak up if I'm mischaracterizing any of these in your mind, but I'm trying to be quick. Then we also had improvements to the peer court program. My understanding is that there's mention of that in the draft budget, but that's not final yet. So because the city is still in, and maybe the council member can speak for that if it's in your mind, but
I'll look it up right now, but I think you're correct.
Okay. And then so that basically both of those programs, there's a number. I mean, if you go into our recommendations document that's linked here, there's a lot of stuff under each one of them, but we want them to live on sustainable funding sources as opposed to being grant dependent, because those wraparound services are really valuable for the students who participate in them, and are also valuable for the SROs. And Detective Atkinson, you can feel free to speak up for yourself if you like, but are useful for the SROs to have places to refer students to that are good places for them to be. So those are the ones that have been, and the FTE and the mayor's office to track equity in education. We had a lot of conversation around this one. This one came up early in our conversations, but it was because the city was in the process of hiring a chief equity officer, which we now have. There was a lot of back and forth about whether it would be effective to have that person in the mayor's office, because of course the school district, you can't tell the school district what to do if you're in the mayor's office, because they're two different agencies, but we still feel strongly that having someone at the city who is focused specifically on equity in education will serve to move the needle on this more effectively than somebody who has that as part of a long list of responsibilities where it's getting lost in the mix, that somebody needs to have, that this is worthy of having someone focused on it. And I think one of the things we've talked about in the full commission is that, you know, the budget really says where your priorities are. And if we can have that FTE to focus on this, I think that will also demonstrate that this is an item of value to focus on and move forward. So that's what we have pushed forward and had approved by the full commission. Now, there are a number of things that we've talked about that have not yet been moved forward. And that's where I wanted to spend our time. Hey, Steve, how are you? Spend our time today to talk about these and decide which ones we still feel strongly about, which ones our thinking has evolved on, to see if there are things that we still want to bring forward in the time remaining in this first phase of the commission. Steve, just to catch you up, we're just going through kind of what we've done to date and what we've had on the not back burner, but just things that haven't been brought forward to the full commission yet, and what we would like to turn into full-fledged recommendations and flesh out to bring forward to the commission. So one is that and I can't remember where the conversation left off on this one, honestly, where we're talking about combining forces of the PD and the school district data analyst to improve data collection for improved ability to analyze school safety issues going forward. Do you remember where we left that and why we didn't pull it forward?
You know, I don't remember. I know that,
you know, I think it might have been that we were, because this was before, I'm trying to recreate history here, but this is before we met with the superintendent. And I think we might have wanted to wait.
we want to meet with the new superintendent. That's what we're waiting for. You're absolutely right. Yeah, we're waiting very, very patiently.
Yeah.
To meet with a new superintendent.
Yeah,
We're so excited to get started.
Yeah, he is fantastic. You guys are gonna really, I'm actually really starting to be very hopeful about this as I'm looking at the list here. And just at the same time thinking about the new board, you know, of Salt Lake City. In addition to the new superintendent coming, you know, everything here seems to be aligned with what we are looking into doing and working on. So very excited.
Wonderful. Yeah, so that one we just don't want to, we want it to be an appropriate recommendation. So
yes,
what exactly we want them to coordinate on. Moises, you are off mute.
I think we're also thinking maybe that new FTE could really help us guide that as well, to be that liaison, make sure that we bring that in, and also getting feedback from the oversight committee as well. You're kind of going that back and forth. So
yeah,
it's a complex one, so it's gonna take a while.
Yeah, and there is a number of things that, and maybe the council member have a thought on this, but there's a number of things. So we have another document that I made reference here to. We have put together a draft document that talks about how can we accurately measure the efficacy of a program like the SRO program. And so we have a big document about that, but I'm not sure all of that really rolls forward as official recommendations. It's really more, hey, oversight group that already exists, here's our thoughts on how you could measure this program. Or you know, they're also, you know, we have thoughts on, you know, what might go into a future MOU. So they're not always fitting in that exact way where they would come forward as a recommendation. It might be attachments or kind of memos or something. I'm not quite sure what the form of them will take, but so I'll just keep going. We have the efforts should be made to, but now some of these, for context for the commissioners, because as we were doing that document, we had a meeting, maybe 2 meetings ago, where we were kind of light on attendance. So we just made it a working meeting where we really went through that document and thought about how can we accurately measure going forward if the world, if it was up to us. And several of those felt like recommendations. So I dropped them here to see if we want to pull them forward as recommendations, or if we want to leave them in that criteria document. So these are just for your consideration. I'll read them out, so don't worry about needing to. And actually, Lauren, if you can pump up the size a tiny bit, that would be useful, but I'll read them out. Efforts should be made to benchmark current disparity and outcomes for students of color and track improvements on metrics for these students to ensure the disparity doesn't grow. So one of the things we do see in the data is that despite the fact that there are many fewer referrals to, like when we're talking school to prison pipeline, there are many fewer due to juvenile justice reform and a number of different efforts at this end. There's, even though the numbers are fewer, the disparity still exists. And so I put that right next to the data analyst one, because there's this kind of, the next few are data driven, and I'm not sure if we want to combine them into one or what we want to do, but just basically saying that disparity exists. We need to make an effort to benchmark it and track, like if we're talking about a dashboard or something like that, track progress towards equity and have that be a number that can be trackable. And right now it doesn't feel like, given the data we've seen, that we can track it effectively. So data must be able to be disaggregated for race and ethnicity, including Latino, as well as gender. And I think we heard from the data analysts and from all we talked to that that's possible, given the original recommendation was that we needed to replace that software, because we were told that it wasn't possible to disaggregate on ethnicity. But I believe the conversation we had with the data analyst tells us that it is possible. But-
They gave us an updated version, and that one already has it broken down with race, ethnicity.
Yeah, and so we still
So they can do it.
Yeah, and maybe that's, maybe we need to hand it to them, the data analysts, to help us to create a dashboard, or I'm not quite sure who gets tasked with figuring out how to benchmark it, figuring out how to track it. I don't know. Sorry, Moises.
Yeah.
I cut you off.
Yeah, but the analysts already gave us an updated report that has it broken down by race, ethnicity. So
Yeah, we
I'm
know
sure they can do that, and it's just being able to connect them with the data analysts with the school district, which they have as well.
Yeah, so I mean, there's lots of different ways we can go with, making sure that these thoughts are memorialized. And so one of them that we sort of has started when we moved for the FTE recommendation, it could be that this is, a recommended responsibility for that FTE, right? That person should be benchmarking and keeping track of and working with the data analysts,
Yes,
et cetera.
totally agree with that.
So we can have that as sort of put into that category. So now this was talking about getting feedback, like not just that oversight committee being the people who analyze how well the SROs are doing, but that there be some feedback loop specific to these schools, because if there's anything we've learned, it's that individual SROs can be very powerful, that there are some that are awesome and doing great work, and there are others who are not. And so looking at it, at the program as a whole, is only one part of the picture. So some of these we had a great participation that day from our youth subcommittee, which the board member and council member should be aware that our youth subcommittee is awesome, and they had a lot of these next few represent their thoughts on how we could better track what's happening at the school level. So twice yearly surveys should be anonymously distributed to administrators, officers, and city staff involved in the program, and that there should be desired results that should be benchmarked and looking at trends, because those are the stakeholders that the SROs are basically working for. So we recognize that there is a survey. Moises, tell me the name of it, the state level one that we talked about. Do you remember? that came out from the recent legislation?
No, you're talking about the Sharps or the climate survey?
I think it was the climate survey that we were talking about, that exists, but it doesn't get to the school level and it's not administered to the parents, I believe was some of the challenge with that. So we actually recommended something a little more specific to the SRO program and a little more school specific, or at least district specific. So that was where that came from. Involve students and community members in the hiring process of the SROs on hiring committees and the evaluation of the SROs on the oversight committee. And we had a recommendation, I think it was Dati told us that there's probably the student board member would be a good, because it's difficult to get, as much as that concept is nice to get somebody to actually show up to a hiring committee who's a student, we would want to make sure to point to someone who would be good, a good candidate for that. So we talked about student board members, members of student governments, or volunteers vetted through the admin to fill those roles. But having some students say and community members say in that process was discussed. Also having better options for reporting incidents with the SRO program. There's, as we learned, there are, you know, anonymous Instagram accounts where students are telling their stories, and there is an actual, is it, remind me, is it 211, or there is a way to report incidents.
It's called Safe UT. It's an anonymous tip line.
Thank you. But that it so far doesn't seem to be it doesn't seem to be regarded as a place that people are using. So we need to figure out a better way for people to self-report these incidences and for there to be some follow-up on them. Create a list of examples of what major disruption and flagrant criminal offenses include to include in the future MOU language. There's just some wording in the MOU that's a little vague, and it was difficult for us to understand. Following be tracked as areas for improvement. Student ratings on interactions with SLCPD, both in and out of school. Parent ratings on the climate their student experiences. This is a little bit out of context here, but it's from the criteria document. I mean, if you look at let's see if I can pull it up behind the scenes here, but if you look at the MOU, the goals of it within the MOU are a little bit broad as stated. So this is in reaction to that. So there's 3 goals: to provide for the health, safety, and welfare of school district students, personnel, and authorized visitors and volunteers. So that's one goal. They're supposed to provide for the health, safety. I mean, none of that's further defined than that. Provide for the health, safety, welfare of school district students, personnel, authorized visitors, and volunteers. To maintain, and the second is to maintain a safe and secure environment in school district facilities and at school district programs by the parties acting swiftly and cooperatively when responding to major disruptions and flagrant criminal offenses at school. And the third is to report serious crimes that occur on campus and ensure cooperation with the law enforcement officials in their investigation of crimes. Oh, sorry, there's more than that. To foster educational programs and activities that will increase students' knowledge of and respect for the law and the function of law enforcement agencies. I mean, we don't need to improve school climate is the one that was just like, to improve school climate. Well, great. Like, what's wrong with it now? And how do we, like, what are the aspects of that need to get better? So as you can see, I mean, that MOU we know was from the interviews we did was meant to address the division of labor between the admin and the SRO program. We've learned that. So perhaps these goals were secondary to what they were trying to achieve at the time, but it's difficult to hold anyone accountable to them because they're so broad. Is all I'm trying to. Was somebody trying to speak? I can't see everybody when the screen is shared like this. So if you were trying to talk, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Yeah, well, improving school climate, that's not going to be just SROs. It's going to be all school officials that are in that building as well. So I know Department of Education has a big piece trying to push that, period. right? Improving that school climate so we can have a nice, healthy learning environment for all our children.
Yes.
And to be able to see, okay, this is your little part here, SROs to be able to contribute to that. So I think it's doable.
Agreed. And then I'll just last one I have tracked here is a lot of the goals state it sort of, but a lot of the conversation we've had with SROs and with others is the goal of that program from the outset was to improve trust between the police department and students. And that's a difficult thing also to measure. It's very qualitative. And so we were talking about ways that we could track, like, is that trust actually being built or is it being eroded through this program? Because depending on the anecdotal stories you hear, you definitely feels like there's a little bit of both. And so we talked about perhaps reporting specifically on students, because I mean, we've heard from Detective Atkinson and others SROs, I mean, they really do get involved in particular students and their outcomes. So perhaps some way of being more specific with the reporting and saying, hey, student A is struggling in the following areas. Here are the steps I took to, I've referred him to this program, or I got him involved in my basketball league, or whatever that is, and really tracking those outcomes to see, I mean, individual data seems to be the only way to really track that trust building goal, because otherwise it's just sort of out there floating like, yeah, this seems like a good idea to do that, but is it actually doing that, or is it making things worse? Or so those were ones that felt like they could potentially be turned into recommendations out of that criteria document. And then before we stop sharing this, do you mind going to that other tab, Lauren?
While you're switching over, I'll just let you know I did find the mayor recommended budget has $20,000 for peer court. Wonderful. As part of her recommendation in the non-departmental fund, and I would be completely shocked if any council member tried to touch it and take it out. So I think you could consider that pretty safe.
Wonderful. Can you tell me, is that an ongoing funding source, or is that 1 year? Or would that,
well, I mean, to a degree, it's out of the general fund. Mm-hmm. So it would be an ongoing funding source, but the budget is readopted every year. Sure. So
yeah, absolutely. But if it's out of the general fund, that makes sense to me. So, and then we talked last time about things we wanted to do in our timeline, but didn't get a chance to do. So I just wanted a place to track those as well. And as you know, this is in our Google Drive that you all have access to. So I want to make sure that we're just keeping an eye. And we wanted to do a focus group with parents of students who've interacted with SROs, and a youth listening session with a focus on the SRO program. And we wanted to meet with the new superintendent. So I was just tracking, like, we had a conversation last time about, like, what were some of the big picture things that we wanted to get to that we didn't get a chance to get to in this time frame. So because we're coming up on the end of kind of the first phase of how this commission was created. It was created through the end of the fiscal year. And so our ongoing work has yet to be defined in terms of how often will we meet. It sounds like we're definitely going to have an ongoing work, but what that will look like, I want to make sure this is all preserved so we don't lose momentum depending on how that comes together. So, sorry, that was a lot of me talking, but do you want to jump back to that other recommendation tracker, Lauren, please? And then are there, I guess, any comments are welcome from any of our guests at any point, but for our subcommittee members, do any of these feel like, what do we want to push forward now? And how do we want to? Any of those that jumped out at you as ones that, oh shoot, we definitely want to move that one forward? Or maybe Nicole, now's a good time for you to talk about your thoughts on the MOU.
Yeah, so with the MOU, we have the new superintendent coming on board, but it's set to expire, I think, in at the beginning of the school year, so August. He's not going to have enough time to renegotiate an MOU really starting in June for 2 months, not with, settling into a new school district and getting to know the inner workings. So realistically, I think we need to recommend that the MOU be extended until next year. And it's not great, but I think that's realistically what we're looking at, because I just don't think it's humanly possible to renegotiate an MOU in 2 months, particularly when there's talk of us taking a break. We don't have the FTE fully on board yet, and it was somewhat envisioned that FTE could assist in some of those negotiations, or at least provide be a bit of a liaison between all three of the agencies: the city, the SLCPD, and the school district. That extending the MOU would also give us time to get some of these other things up and running, so that when we do go to renegotiate it next year, when the PD and school district renegotiate it next year, some of these things are ready to go into place and ready to be implemented. We'll have some good measurable goals that we can recommend to be included in the new MOU. So I think overall it makes sense. My first knee-jerk reaction was, no, I don't want to, but realistically, practically speaking, I think it serves everybody's interest to do that. So that's the first thing that I was going to mention.
Lauren, do you mind unsharing just so we can all see each other while Nicole's presenting, and then we can share it back up when we want to go back to that. Thank you.
And then the other thing that I personally kind of want to see is Sandra Holland sponsored legislation this last session, HB, I believe 345, to add some more to the school resource officer statute. I loved what she included and what she wanted to add. Unfortunately, our legislature disagreed, and a majority of what she initially wanted to include was excluded. But that does not stop us on our local level from including some of this language into the new MOU. So I wanted to run this by the rest of the school safety subcommittee and see if that would be something we could look at doing, is recommending that some of this language be incorporated specifically, because it was really good language. And a lot of it serves some of the goals that we've been looking at. So that was one of the things I did want to talk with everyone about, is the extending the MOU one more year, recommendation that it be extended one more year, and then also including some of this language from the original version of HB 345.
So I'm totally fine with extending that MOU. I mean, in my opinion, it's the best one, if not some of the best ones in the state. Steve and I have seen several MOUs between law enforcement and school districts all over the state, and oftentimes they use the Salt Lake School District one as a template. Is it perfect? Of course not. And all MOUs should be renewed every 5 years or whatever, something like that. So I'm fine with it. And I like your thought, Nicole, that we don't have the super here yet, so we're not going to be that high on the on the priority list.
No, don't worry. We'll make sure that you got a boss of the. You have a boss of the superintendent here.
I mean, I'm willing to throw some Girl Scout cookies to sweeten the deal to get us a little bit further up on the list, but and
Girl
Shavon, I bet you have some
cookies.
extras too.
Girl Scout cookies.
I have so many, guys. Oh my gosh. I have cases upon cases in my basement.
You and me both, Nicole. I share that with you. My garage is pretty stocked as well.
There's no shortage of Thin Mints in my house.
I have zero. And then secondly, although I definitely like most of Holland's stuff. There's some language in there that there's just no way. Only because of practicality, like where they wanted all school officials to go through this training, and there's just no way that's going to be possible. I mean, we're having a hard time trying to get teachers, just getting SROs, the school administrators, to do that. And to get teachers has been pulling teeth, and then to get, the administrative assistants, cafeteria staff, all that. I mean, in theory, I definitely think that'd be great, but the reality, so stuff like that. So yeah, but other language, I really liked it too. There was some stuff that we were like, oh man, hopefully this will stay in, and it wasn't. So I definitely would like that conversation to see what we can push in at our local level at least. And thirdly, a lot of times people call me Mo, and they think it's because it's Muhammad, but no, it's because it's Moses. So hey, 2 Mo's, that are the same but different.
Two modes are better than one. So,
Nice to meet you.
that's great. So do we want to, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I just have a question. I know there are, I see a lot of names. I'm not really familiar. If I could just know who is who and what they are doing, that would be so
Yeah.
fantastic.
Should we do a little informal round of introductions? Samantha, you're in my upper left, so I'll let you kick it off.
Hi, Mohammed. I'm Samantha Eldridge. I'm just a member of the Native American community here. So here just to provide more perspective and making sure that our voices are also heard in this conversation.
Thanks, Samantha. My next square is Beverly Hawkins, who is, she comes and basically audits all of our processes for the League of Women Voters. She's not a commission member, but she might as well be. She's an unofficial. She is always here to listen and it often has feedback for us. So Beverly, you can feel free to speak for yourself if you like, but I just want to give you that intro. Okay. And then Moises, talk about who you are.
Yes, Moises, and run a nonprofit crime prevention center named iChamps, which is I'm representing today. There it is. Work a lot with youth development, training law enforcement, educators, and social service providers how to work with youth, and I do a lot of program evaluation. So, nice to meet you.
Thank you, Moises. Steve.
Yeah, I typically join this committee because I have a conflict with the other, and I realized today that meeting to Thursday, and I could actually jump in once in a while. I heard that we were going to have a school board member, and Mohammed, I was hoping it was you, so I feel very fortunate to jump in. I do miss you living around the corner, and I recommend the couscous if you ever get an opportunity to go to the pop-up restaurant. He also operates. And I don't know if you remember Mohammed, but my background is in law enforcement. I worked in the police department for 25 years, and I've been retired almost 4 now. Partnered with the other Mo.
Mhm.
And when he was referencing training people in the SRO program, we currently have a contract with the state to train administrators and police officers together on what the law is and to their MOUs. It's good to see you, and I think Darren's out of the room, but I also in his district as well, so like a nice family.
Lovely. Nicole, you're up in the next slot.
I'm Nicole Salazar Hall. I'm an attorney, a family law attorney at Parsons, Bailey and Latimer. One of the court commissioners. My brother is on the board with you, Mohammed. I'm also in D5. Yeah, Nate is my brother. So I try to get as much inside info as I can. He's pretty cagey though. So the best I begged and pleaded with him to please get us on the superintendent's like priority schedule. He's like June earliest. And I was like, come on, cut your sister some slack. But no, I'm a D5 resident. I have a history in my former life. I was a social worker. I was a permanency worker with DCFS for 2 years. I did epidemiological drug studies before that. And before going to law school, I was an outreach case manager for the Utah AIDS Foundation. So I've been in the trenches. I'm in an ivory tower now, literally, in an air conditioned tower. I mean, right now I'm in my house in your district, but school safety is something that's been near and dear to my heart since I was doing homeless youth outreach in St. Louis in college. So it's youth populations is one of my favorites. It's one of the only regrets about my current position is I don't get to work with that youth population. It's definitely my favorite population out of any other set of human beings.
Wonderful. Lauren, do you want to give yourself a brief intro?
So I'm Lauren. I'm the Deputy City Recorder. I mostly work on elections, but I get to join this commission or subcommittee group every other week. And I basically take notes and help where I can with just getting everything set up and ready to go.
We wouldn't be here without Lauren. Thanks, Lauren. Detective Atkinson, are you in a place where you can come off mute and introduce yourself?
Yeah, I'm away from my kids right now. Detective Atkinson. My first name's Chad. I work at West High School and mainly on the west side in the west side schools. But we're kind of short right now. So if we get called anywhere, we pretty much have to go. Been doing the SRO thing for a couple of years now, about two years or so. Been an officer coming up on 15. So been around a bit, and actually fell in love with being an SRO more than I thought I would. So that's me in a nutshell.
He's being modest, but he also knows the MOU by heart. So if you ever need him to reference it, he can do so. Kamal, are you able to introduce yourself? I know you were just on audio.
Yes.
Go ahead.
Yes, I can do that. Yeah, so Kamal Ahmed, resident in Poplar Grove. I'm a school administrator. I was in the classroom as a teacher for 7 years in a self-contained behavioral unit. So I'm very familiar with interactions with SROs when it comes to students with disabilities. And now I'm on the admin side of it. So I'm able to see the bigger picture, the whole picture. And that's it, Maya.
Go west side, west side.
We also have a
Yeah,
number.
right on.
Go ahead. We also have a number of members who aren't here today, but we have a really active youth subcommittee population who are awesome. And we have another school administrator, and then I forget. Can somebody remind me what her position is? I don't remember.
She works for a women's center. I don't know if it's a shelter, or if it's out. And then she also owns Sagado Bakery, which their meat pies, man, those New Zealand meat pies to die for. Oh, I forgot I'm the local resident clown too. Sorry, Mohammed.
Yes. We have an informal vibe here for the most part.
I love that. That's how it's supposed to be, you know. We do not need to all be uptight, no, this and that, talk this way. This is how it's supposed to be, you know. Really just being open. And I was gonna ask, is it okay if I have some other school board members extend the invite so that they can join in? Because I know the two school board members that joined as well, we share the same concern. And I think it is a great time to actually, because it involves schools, and any policies that we push, you know, comes through the school board. And so there is a lot out there. Since 2016 to the death of George Floyd and so on, sadly to say, there has been a lot of distrust, discomfort, and also PTSD generator to minorities who are at school. There are really nice detectives out there, and just like listening to Detective Atkinson here, and it's just like, he sounds like a genuinely a great man. And the sad reality, anytime you have one or two bad apples in the tree, it does, you know, you have to treat the whole tree. And that is exactly what we are dealing with, because my kids are Black kids, you know. My wife is Caucasian, but my kids, you know, they are the latte kiddos. And for them, you know, when they are at school, I heard it from them, it's hard, you know, seeing a heavily armed police officer, it's intimidating. And I thought, you know, yes, I can imagine that. But then I went to school myself, and seeing that in person, I had a chance to talk to the SRO, a nice man. But the reality is, there is intimidation. You know, having a heavy armed police officer in a place where we are supposed to teach, in a place where you're supposed to feel safe, is just, you know, it just contradicts what we are trying to do over here. We want safety at schools, but let's figure out other ways that makes, I got so many ideas, so many things. My brain is just can't stop thinking when it comes to this. I'm talking from my own opinion as a Black man, as a minority, as an immigrant, as Muhammad in Utah, who has kids at school. And not only that, who also represents, who serves a community that has a very large minority, especially in Salt Lake City. And I want to, so excited that this is already happening, because I was wondering, how can I go about this? Because there are so many other ways that we can maintain safety. Yeah, I love the suggestions, and I'm sure I'm going to be storming y'all with some other ideas that I have as we go.
Well, yes, we love other ideas, and I would say you can all tell me no, but I think that we would love to have participation from more school board members, because I think as we've been learning, our purview is specific to the Salt Lake City PD, like that's our thing. But what we're learning is, I mean, especially when it comes to school safety, that it has to be together with the school district, or one can't dictate to the other. It really has to be a shared decision-making process. So I think we would love it.
Absolutely. And I had a chance, because prior to joining the school board, myself, my wife, and a few of our other friends, we used to do a consulting, for UHP, Utah Highway Patrol Department, at the main building, basically, and had the honor of sitting down and talking just as a human beings, outside of all the policies, just as citizens who are experiencing a certain discomfort because of what's going on. Just like me going outside walking, I should not be worried that if I put my hoodie, I'm gonna make neighbors discomfortable. Or if I'm walking, just enjoying the walk in my neighborhood. And, I feel like, just not comfortable even like taking a look at the yard and just enjoying it. Because, those are things, sadly to say, that as a person that I live with. And so there was Commissioner Anderson, and just like such a wonderful man. And he told me anything to reach out to him. And, we got some resources out there that for sure they're willing, to help in any way possible. So just throwing that in there. So I'm not afraid to keep digging in there, really.
Well, we love that. I think that'll be great, and we would love to have participation, or if it makes sense to do a standalone meeting where we talk specifically about issues where we can help one another out. I think that we've done both, and so if they can make this meeting time, great. We love to not take extra time from our commissioners because they're giving us so much time already, but we have done both, and so happy to work out either way. We are out of time because our hour goes so fast every time we meet, but I want to talk to the commission about do you want to get into that Google Doc, and I can kind of put like a, thumbs up, thumbs down, like, do we want to move these forward, and you could add some in, because like just now I was reminded when Muhammad was speaking of when we were talking about issues of uniforms, and whether there were, we have SROs in our group, and so they have talked to us about what parts of that are really necessary for different reasons, and if there are some adjustments we can make to the kind of that intimidation, that physical intimidation factor, and still keep everyone safe and compliant and whatever. So that's another one that came up casually that wasn't recorded. So do you all want to, you can either email me, or I can attach it as a document. Nicole and Moises, I can attach it, and we can just add to it that way, and then further the conversation over email over the next couple weeks. to just see which ones we think are worthy of pulling forward for our next full commission. I mean, I guess
When is our next full commission meeting again? I don't have my notes in front of me.
I believe it is.
Sorry, I've been in trial prep all day.
I believe it's next Wednesday. Is that right, Lauren? Yeah,
I think so, yeah.
I believe it's the 5th. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong. The 2nd.
Is that our last full commission meeting?
I think there's one more in the schedule. at
Okay.
least. And then we
Maybe
have a
16th.
couple. Yeah, we have a couple more subcommittees as well. So if we
Okay.
can come up with a draft document in the next week, we can present it as a draft to the full commission, which then would pull us through, you know, and be hopefully make sure we can get it in front of council.
Perfect.
And then
Yeah, I think that's perfect. And just to clarify, Mo, because I agree, I don't think we're going to be able to get all school personnel to do any of this SRO training, and as outlined in Sandra Hollins's bill. That is not the one I was looking at. Actually, that's not the specific change that I was looking at. It was more the 53G 8703 1A and 1B changes that are all about the purpose, the
Lawyers.
metrics. Sorry, the purpose of the contract, the metrics, the steps the LEA and school resource officer took before an arrest or disciplinary action, those changes, those big ones.
do you want to highlight those and send them to me, like send the document to me, and I'll put them in the Google Drive for everybody's consideration? If you want to, yeah, send me the ones that you have highlighted there, and I will pull them. I will pull them and put them into the document and just kind of mention, so then it's all in one place for everybody's consideration, and we're not having to jump around to 50 different documents. Does that feel?
Yeah, I can do that. Yeah.
Doable thing over the next little bit, and then we can maybe pull together a draft to talk to the full commission about, even if we're not ready to ask for their like permission or whatever, just so it's not out of the blue. Go ahead.
Why don't I just send you the bill, and then I'll send you the specific code section, because I've had issues with this program and highlighting. Like, I've highlighted stuff in the PDF before, and it does not show up when it gets to the end
That
user.
makes sense. Yeah, if you just give me the numbering, I can pull them over into that document, so everybody, it's all in one place for us all to look at. And if you'd like, Mohammed, we can keep you copied on that stuff. Lauren, if you wouldn't mind keeping them on our, kind of distribution list, even as a, you're not an official member, but I mean, these are open to the public, and you are a member of the public. And if you want to follow and be a part of the work, we're grateful to have your inputs and thoughts. So we can do that. Okay. Well,
I just sent that.
Thank you. We're 8 minutes behind. I didn't see anyone show up from any of our youth programs, so I think we're okay to close the meeting for now and continue via email. But we're really, really grateful that council member and board member are so interested in this work, and we love to have different ideas from different sources. That's why this group has been so great, because everybody comes from different backgrounds and different perspectives. So it's already, we have great voices, and adding yours, we can only make things better. So
yeah, and first name basis, my favorite thing.
Okay.
That's, I'm as casual as could be. I also, in the chat, I did put in my email and my cell phone number. Please keep that with you. Anything, yeah.
Okay.
Texting is the best.
Texting is the best. We love it. We do some of that ourselves. So, all right. Well, thanks everybody. We will stay in touch via email till next we meet. Thanks everybody.
Thanks everyone.